Welcome to the Cell, everybody. Cool conversations with the most amazing salespeople I can find.
You know, this idea that if you only get 1% of the market,
Yeah.
and then you realize, hold on, that's actually real.
Yeah. So the State Department and the CIA is actually, I think, quite heavy leaning towards hiring out of BYU.
It's interesting. If somebody said the two main hirers from BYU, multi-level marketers and the
CIA.
and the CIA, you'd be like, but as soon as you explain that, you're like,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. No, it makes sense, right? If you go to Norway or you go to the Netherlands, you might end up having 0 baptisms that period of time. So you just spend 2 years getting rejected, right? But that's why it's the best way to learn sales. Sales. How many people have I emailed today, LinkedIn message, cold called, etc. And that, how many people that I get appointments with, how many people that I have a meeting and pitch, how many people have I gotten them to sign an agreement, and how many of them have paid?
You know, this idea that if you only get 1% of the market,
Yeah.
and then you realize, hold on, that's actually real.
Yeah.
That's
But that's
actually
also
really
like the whole point with startups. They always say like the TAM, like the total addressable market, is something substantial. And they say if I get X percentage, but it's actually very tough to get that percentage also. Like a lot of people say, oh, if I only get 0.1, if I only get 1%, if I only get 10%, but how are you even going to get that 10% at the beginning?
you know, Dragon's Den? Have you watched
Yes,
that?
yeah. It's Shark Tank, but the UK version or something like that.
There was a dude on it yesterday. I was watching it,
Yeah.
and he said, I only want 0.1%.
Yeah.
And the main guy was like, are you joking?
Yeah.
And the dude standing up said, is that too high or too low? He's like, that's really high. It's
Yeah.
like 0.1 is a lot. It seems so
But
small,
you
right?
think it's small, right? But again, what is the size, right? If the size of the whole world, then obviously 0.1 is massive, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
if you're looking at China if you say 0.1% of Singapore, then yeah. But if you say 0.1% of China, then, that's
it is-
substantial too.
I came to Asia in like 1989,
Yeah.
and I was that kind of young,
I was
dumb
born in 88.
Were you? Look at this. All right. We're crossing over cultures.
yeah.
You were born in Singapore? You're Singaporean, right?
Born and raised.
And I remember I had these stars in my eyes. I mean, this is 80,
Yeah.
88, 89.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's 1 billion people in China. I'm going to sell to all
billion,
of them.
yeah.
I had this idea it'll be so easy.
Which is, theoretically perfect, except in the 80s, it was still wholly agrarian and nothing in the cities, right? And then I guess over that period of time, they've moved over to that.
And I remember I didn't know anything about, because I was selling not really technology back
Yeah.
then. Do you remember floppy disks?
Yeah.
I used to sell floppy disks.
Oh, okay.
Data.
Wait, you would sell the disks themselves or
The data
in
on the
disk?
disks.
Got it.
We
Okay.
used to sell financial data in books,
Yeah.
then on disk.
Interesting.
And I would go to China and try to do big deals without any, is the right word guanji? Like
Yeah,
the-
Guanxi, like
Guanxi.
relationship, essentially. Yeah. No, but that's a crazy thing, right? Because every kid nowadays just knows the floppy disk as the save button. And they don't know why it's the save button, right? Because that was the medium of storage at that point in time. And I mean, I used it for a
You did?
number of years too, yeah.
Were you tech? Like,
In school, like you needed to like put your files and all that. I mean, back then I was born in an era where Windows 95 came out when I was 7, right? So it was still fairly, my dad tells me all the time when it was those punch cards or whatever, where you
yeah.
had to use that for like programming data and stuff like that. Yeah.
but it's the same thing, right? It
Yeah.
is the zeros and ones
Yeah.
to go through it. So why don't we start there?
Yeah.
You were born in 88. You're
was born in 88,
Singaporean. Did you, you stayed because you moved to America at a certain stage.
Yeah.
But those first 18 years?
Yeah,
you
so
were-
I did local school till secondary 3, and then I moved over to American school for high school. So I did that from 9th to 12th grade, or Sec 3 to JC 2, essentially, right?
Why? It's not a normal path
Yeah,
for a Singaporean
it's
kid.
not for sure. Really because my grades weren't good. That was essentially it. And it was either, fortunately, like lucky enough, it was either boarding school or SAS, right? Depending on whether I got into a local international school or not. Unfortunately, I did. Got the permission, et cetera, and all that, and then went there. If not, it was off to boarding school. But yeah.
Boarding school somewhere else?
Yeah, in the US probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why was there any particular reason your parents were pretty keen to get you on a different educational
Yeah.
path?
The school system in Singapore is good, but it is also very fixated on certain types of education and people who are strong in certain subjects, namely science and math, right? And the school I went to for secondary school, which was called ACS Independent was very, science centric. And so they only had 2 streams then. It was called double science or triple science, which was, really not good for a person who was more humanity centric, I suppose. And that was also my fault for not choosing a school that was probably more humanities focused. But, I think they got to a point where they looked at my grades. I think my mom at one point said that I wish your elementary math and additional math score was the score that I had for this total score, because it was so low that I think she was quite worried. And so, that's the thing, right? Once I moved over to American system, I actually performed a lot better because of the way they structure the education. Not because I'm any smarter, but just because of the way they made it, right? And I think the U.S. in particular, just because I think my parents went to school in the U.S. too. So,
okay. Yeah. I've been interested in the thread here.
No, both of them went to school there. Yeah.
So because it is, so you're a people person.
Yeah.
And it's not that people person, no, we're going to talk about sales.
Yeah.
But it's not that people person can't be scientific.
Yeah.
But in general, you're just going down that people path.
Definitely.
Right?
If you talk about sales, so I remember I was in a sales class in university. I just took it for I think it was just a module I had to take for my business minor. And someone came in once and spoke, and she sold epoxy.
Like the
thing that you put
resin
on the floor and all that,
yeah,
right? And I was and I was thinking about this the other day, because I was like, interesting. Like, she definitely had to be more scientific. I think her background was actually around some sort of materials or chemicals or whatnot. But then she was selling epoxy, but her job was sales. But very different personality, I think, from you and me and what you would consider to be more salespeople. But she was still in sales, but she needed to have that combination of both, I guess, somewhat, a bit more friendly, but also have that technical skill set. So she wasn't, you and me, where she's like, yeah, let's do it. But I think she needed that combination. So interesting to see that. My dad was in sales for like 30 years, which I think, not that he ever taught me that, but I guess I picked up that personality.
What was he selling?
Software sales. Yeah. So
he's an OG.
Yeah. He quit oil in the 80s. A headhunter came to him. He was at Mobile. They said, hey, do you want to try something new? And he was like, yeah, why not? Why not try this? And so he joined software in the late 80s. He worked for a company called CA Technologies, or Computer Associates.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, right? He was a Computer Associates.
He ran APAC for Computer Associates.
Because most people today would not know them.
No, because
they were OG back then.
And they were, buying out companies, et cetera, and all that. So he ran APAC for them, and then he moved to another company called VMC Software, where he was also running APAC for them. So that's maybe, I don't know, my blood or whatever, but yeah.
That is, you are destined to go down this path. You don't, you don't have kids, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay. The kids will not, I have a 24-year-old daughter who is in software sales.
Oh, wow. So she really just followed
in New
Dad's
York
path.
But, kids don't do what you tell them.
Yeah.
Like, you're saying your dad didn't tell you to be sales, but you're hanging around him and
you pick it up. But I think it's very roundabout too, right? So my background, I think we spoke about my background a little earlier. My first job was in banking, and it was totally not something that I'd seen myself going down. It was something that happened, and obviously when my parents saw the brand name, they were like, "Oh, okay, you must do this, right?" And I did it for 2 years, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life." And it eventually ended up doing this. I probably wouldn't sell what my dad was selling, which was essentially enterprise software and mainframe software and all that, because I don't think I'm necessarily very passionate about mainframe software. But with what I'm selling now, I'm passionate about that, right? And so I think it's finding what you are interested in too. Yeah.
But before we get onto that journey on, again, because I did my LinkedIn stalking, and we'll mention the brand name that you got to. It really is the top brand name. Yeah. You went to Brigham Young University?
Yeah, I did.
So maybe 2 questions. Well, I think I can figure out why America, and I can also figure out why Brigham Young, because it's a Mormon university.
Yeah.
Was going to America, I think that's always going to happen. And was religion always part of your thought process?
Yeah, so good questions. I think the US piece would probably be, I would say, more parental. I don't think it's necessarily my choice. I think at one point I had a family friend who said if you get into Oxford and you do law, I'll buy you a car. Right?
Whoa!
One, because I think cars are a lot cheaper there. And
straight up bribery.
And she was fairly well to do. So I think she doesn't have kids and not married. So I think she was like, whatever. And I think if we should figure out the chances of me getting into Oxford or Cambridge were relatively low.
This is a good bet.
It was a good bet, right, for her. She didn't end up buying me a car, right? So good bet for her. But BYU was because, yes, I think, as we mentioned, I grew up Mormon.
Yep.
And so when it came time to applying for universities, my mom gave me 3 choices. BYU, BYU Idaho, or BYU Hawaii. The 3 campuses.
Okay,
Let's
just
just
3.
go to one of the 3 of them, right? And for what it's worth, I think the Mormon Church actually subsidizes it a lot for members.
I didn't know that.
And so when I went, I was paying $2,000 a semester. My dad said that he was paying more for his education in the 70s than he was paying for mine in 2010, right? Or in the 2000s, right? And because I had a half scholarship, because my grades were better at that point in time, he was paying $1,000 a semester for some of the semesters.
Absolutely.
Not bad, right?
Dude, beyond not bad.
Yeah.
So both my kids went to UVA.
Yeah, okay, University of Virginia. And I'm sure
today, as foreign kids, it's 75,000 US a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, 75 versus 2,000. So I know a bunch of people who are just like, man, if I knew my kid could like just, because there are certain rules that you have to follow, but they would do that. And I actually know a bunch of Singaporean kids that went there, not because they're Mormon, but because BYU back then, I don't know about now, had the #1 accounting program in the US.
It's a good university, BYU.
Yeah. And so there were, I think the Singaporean mentality is, #1, I must go there, right? Like this is whatever it is. And so I think they probably got there and they're like, what in the world did I get myself into? But yeah.
Is it when you get there everyone there is Mormon?
Let's say 98%. I mean, that really is.
It really is.
Yeah. And then the 2% is these accounting kids and sports people, right? Yeah.
Is it Division 1?
Yes.
For sports?
Yeah, it is.
Football
and basketball, right? So I think both solid. It's a solid sports school, I guess. I mean, I think some years so I think for March Madness, like the past few years, they've been ranked fairly high, like top 10. And then they always like bomb out the first round. So we're like, come on.
Have they won March Madness? Have they won before?
They have not. They have won the College Bowl once in like 1984. But before my time.
My daughter arrived at UVA in 2016.
Yeah.
UVA quite well ranked.
Yeah.
Never won March Madness.
Yeah.
The year she arrived, they won it.
Oh, fantastic!
The campus
I guess she was the one that really brought them.
I don't know.
Went
she
crazy.
went crazy.
Yeah.
But American unis, they're pretty amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things to be said about the U.S., but I think from an education perspective, they still really do lead. I guess in terms, I think it's. I mean, I don't know about research and all that, but I think it's the way they teach, right? Again, it's like how they draw things out of you and try to make you better as a more holistic person.
It feels it's the opposite of, in the UK, if you study biology, you just do biology.
Yeah.
But if you go there and you're just doing, my son's in his last year, he's done biology, but he's doing astronomy right now.
So why did he decide the UK versus your
they both went to the US.
Oh, he's in the US too.
And at UVA as well.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so both of them are UVA.
They both went there. But you're right. I think the American university, it gives you good skills, right?
Yeah. Good skill sets. I think like good ways to, I mean, look, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, people skills are important. And I think, when you travel and you hear people talk, the only people you hear are the Americans. Like it's the normal voice, but they're talking really loudly. So if you're in a restaurant, you cannot hear any conversation except for the Americans who are talking really loudly.
It can
and you can hear exactly what they're saying too.
It can be a lot. Yeah. So look, you said you were happy to talk about it. I have always. So I grew up in the UK. I've been in Asia 35 years. And wherever you go in the world, at some point you'll see somebody from the church talking about religion.
Yeah.
And I've had this, so I'm not religious.
Yeah.
If I'm anything, I'm kind of Buddhist. I'm a karmic dude. I just believe let's just be cool to each other and
Agreed.
Things should be okay. But I always would talk to these dudes because I'm like, because I'm as a salesperson, I'm like, you're so polite.
Yeah.
You're so well presented.
Yeah.
You're so clear about what you're selling. Like you really, and I always used to say, I want to hire. What do they call when people go?
I mean, more missionaries.
Missionaries.
Right?
Yeah. When you see missionaries, because sure they can be hard sell.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd love to hear what was the experience like.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, for one thing, Utah, the Mormon hotbed is the state that has the most MLMs because they're really good at sales, and so a lot of MLMs in the U.S.
They come out
of that. So whether it's New Skin, whether it's Young Living, essential oils, and all that, a lot of them come out from Utah. Right.
I didn't know.
And I think maybe one more point to add before I dive into what we're talking about is, the State Department and the CIA actually hire very aggressively from BYU for a number of reasons. One, because they're missionaries, they have all spent, for the most part, 2 years in a country learning the native language. So whether it's in Taiwan learning Mandarin, whether it's in, I think not at the moment, but Russia learning Russian, whether it's, in Brazil learning Portuguese, they are native. They spend 2 years learning the culture and the language, right? So that's that. Two, I mean, generally speaking, because they are religious, they are more trustworthy, et cetera, and all that. And so they end up being recruited very aggressively out of that. So the State Department and the CIA is actually, I think, quite heavy leaning towards hiring out of BYU.
It's interesting. If somebody said the two main hirers from BYU, multi-level marketers and the
CIA.
And the CIA, you'd be like, but as soon as you explain that, you're like, 100%.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, right? I mean, at the end of the day. But I mean, no, the experience was, I mean, back then I was like fully, ingrained in a religion and all that, so was happy to do it. And it is really, I mean, I think I've spoken about this before, but it really is, if you can sell religion, you can sell anything, right? You spend 2 years getting rejected, really, right? Different countries, different cities obviously have different varying levels of success. So if someone goes to Brazil, they could baptize 200 people, right? Because you're baptizing large families, people are more receptive. I mean, generally speaking, if you are from a poorer country or, versus a richer country, if you go to Norway or you go to the Netherlands, you might end up having 0 baptisms that period of time. So you just spend 2 years getting rejected, right? But that's why it's the best way to learn sales, because depending again on where you are. So I did mine in Singapore, which is rare. Normally you go overseas.
Was that a choice? Your choice?
No.
Or their
So
choice?
the Mormon leadership or prophet gets inspiration, and then they send you to wherever you are. But I mean, I think with that, in Singapore you can't door knock. You can only talk to people on the street. It's illegal.
You mean that's illegal in Singapore?
It's illegal in Singapore to door knock. It's not illegal to proselytize, but it's illegal to go door to door.
Okay.
Right? So you just have to go to the people in the MRT
you'll just
or on the
hang in.
street, and you're just like, hello, right? But then in other countries, obviously, you can go and knock on the doors and all that, right? So you're a door-to-door salesperson. I think in terms of structure, I didn't realize this till obviously after, because I had no experience before that. It is a sales funnel, right? Of course. Because when you look at it, you're reporting this every day and every week and every month.
How do you report it?
You call it in every night to your leadership, right? So there's an entire structure where you're in companionships, right? 2 by 2.
I've
right?
seen.
And then when you have that, you have your district, you have your zone, you have your assistants to the president, and then the mission president, right? So this is how the reporting line goes. And when you look at the funnel, it's the same thing when it comes to sales, right? So how many people have you contacted, i.e. how many people have you spoken with today? How many appointments have you set, right? So how many meetings have you set? How many meetings have you had today? How many appointments have you had? How many have you put on baptism date? And how many have you baptized? I think you can see it.
100%.
Right? So
Incredible.
When you look at it that way, and when they go home and when they start working, it's the same thing, right? Sales. How many people have I emailed today? LinkedIn message, cold called, etc. And that. How many people that I get appointments with? How many people did I have a meeting and pitch? How many people have I gotten them to sign an agreement? And how many of them have paid? Same thing.
It's incredible to hear it as clearly, because it is obvious. You see these dudes and people in the street, and they're clearly following a script to a degree. I didn't know it was detailed. So maybe like a slightly weird question. Do they have a CRM? Are they using Salesforce or something? Or they built their own CRM?
So when I was around, we were still not very technologically advanced, because again, I did this 15 years ago now, 16 years ago now. So it was still pen and paper. Now they do have an iPad. And to my understanding, I think there's obviously a way for them to track. So yes, I think they have a religious CRM where they can essentially follow up, right? And they have all the data and all that. So we actually did have a CRM, but it was a book full of paper. And you get the person's number. And then if someone hadn't, been spoken to in a while, you would call. And obviously missionaries move around to different areas, right? So you spend 3 months or 6 months in a certain area and you move to the next one and you're switching companionships. But because you have this whole book, essentially then the next missionaries would then
pass
go
on the
back.
book?
Yeah, the book stays in the area, right? So the book stays in the area and then you move along. So it could be 3 years later where Ned was spoken to and you look and you're like, oh, no one's called Ned in a while. And you will go and the next person will say, well, it's a slow day. Let me call Ned and see if Ned picks up.
This is exactly sales.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly sales.
100%. Yeah. There's no difference. It's selling religion, right? Selling software, selling religion, selling events. It's all the same thing, right? I mean, everything that we do in life, in a sense, is sales, but obviously some are more than others.
This is right at that level whereby I suppose there's this misconception. Oh, it's religion. It'll be a different thing. There's just people floating around in the street saying, hey.
No, and there's scripts, objections, everything and all that. So I'll give you an example, right? So if I met you on the street and you said, oh, I'm Christian, I would say, well, have you ever wondered why there's so many churches on this earth? There's one Jesus Christ, but why so many different churches? And the Mormon church, I think, purports that they're the one true church on this earth. And so then you would go down that path. If you said, oh, I'm Buddhist, I'm a free thinker, whatever, my question would be, oh, have you ever wondered where you're from, why you're here, and where you're going? And then go down that whole path of like, there was a pre-earth life, you're here on this earth to gain experiences and then go to heaven or hell, I mean, for want of a better word, I guess, at the end. So there are different ways to pitch. There are different ways to sell people. Like, again, different objections, warrant different responses.
But it's this fascinating thing that we both know. You don't sell the features. You don't turn up and go, hey, do you want to read the Bible?
Yeah.
Nobody actually wants. I don't mean that badly, but they're like, do you wonder what it's all about?
Yes.
Do you wonder where you've come from?
Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
It's fantastic sales because you're trying to give me an idea of what might be a benefit to me.
Yeah. You're qualifying. Right? You're qualifying, right?
So in sales organizations, really good salespeople rise up. Like you've done good in your career and you're rising up to run sales teams. Yeah. Is it the same in the church that the people who do more baptisms generally rise up, or is it a different process?
Yes, to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, you're still quote unquote running this organization for 2 years. So the sales bit is important, but I guess the one part that is maybe different is that I guess in a sales organization or a company, you'll call it culture. In a religion, you consider it spirituality, who's like more in line with the spirit and who is able to do that. So I guess to a certain extent, yes, in the sense that obviously sales is important, but you also want to have the right people.
Yeah,
right?
they've got to be. Exactly.
Yeah.
Were you good at it?
I was not bad. I think I ended up having 24, which is like on average one a month, actually, I guess.
That's pretty good,
Singapore
isn't it?
is pretty tough, right? Because I think Singaporeans are, chop, like running around and all that. And then I think I was lucky because a couple of them were obviously like a family and all that. And look, I think again with sales and with baptisms or whatnot, referrals are the best, right? So essentially, like, oh, someone refers me to Ned and then obviously what you do is you use the church member who has referred Ned to help you out with the meeting, right, or with the lesson. So in the same way, like, if you refer me, maybe I will try and get you to join my first call for sales to sell event because you're there. Same thing with that, right? So referrals for religious purposes work just as well as it does in sales.
It doesn't sound like there's any difference.
Yeah. I don't, the more you talk about it, I don't think there is. It's just a different product, right?
But it's funny, we both talk on LinkedIn and I talk about sales. And actually I wrote this morning a little thing.
Yeah.
If you want to hit your sales target, it's about how many emails you did today, how many outreaches to get, how many emails to get a warm meeting, to get a warm lead, to get a meeting, to get a second meeting, to get it convert. I could have written it to exactly what you just said. So did you finish after it's 2 years?
Yes, so it's always 2 years. Everyone does it for 2 years and then you move on with your life.
And how was it when you finished? Did you miss it? Or were you like, oh my God, here comes the last day and you couldn't wait to get out?
It was probably both, right? Because I think it is fairly regimented. Okay, I guess the huge difference is in sales or in real life, you can do whatever you want after work, right? In the mission, it's very structured. It's almost like being in the military, right? You wake up at 7 a.m. From 7 to 7:30, you exercise. From 7:30 to 8:30, you get ready and have breakfast. From 8:30 to 9:30, you have self scripture study or Bible study. The next hour after that is companionship study with your companion. If you're learning a language, it's 1 more hour of language study, and then you go out. And then you just proselytize for 8 to 9 hours. You have dinner, you go home, and you repeat for 2 years. Like you have a off day for like half a day, but that's about it. Now it's also different as in there's more technology, but back then,
it's the same
email once a week, call home twice a year. That is it. You are not to be distracted because you are there for the work, right? So I think a lot of salespeople would actually be, even more productive if we said, look, don't talk to your family for 2 years. You got to call home twice a year. You got to email home once a year. And by the way, focus on your sales for 8 to 9.
You would sell so much. It would be incredible.
Yeah, you could probably retire after that, right?
100%. So that last day came. Were you?
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy. I mean, I think it was a great experience. But I think, look, everyone counts down the days at a certain point, right? So when you're going up to your first year, you're counting up. And then after the remaining year, you're probably counting down.
And what happened the day did you know, was it university, these 2 years, and then what I see on LinkedIn, Bloomberg, Goldman's, etc.?
Yeah.
Or was there any gap?
No,
there?
So, I mean, I think I did I think for me, Oh, I completely forgot to add one bit. So the church also, before you actually become a missionary, you have to go to a missionary training center. So you actually so if you are not learning a language, you spend about 3 weeks learning. So every day they're teaching you doctrine as well as sales skills. I completely forgot about this actually. I didn't really think about that.
Oh my God.
And then like how to deal with all these things. And if you learn a language, obviously you spend more time because it's language training every day. But yeah, you go to a sales school essentially, right? It's called the Missionary Training Center, but same thing, I guess. Maybe we should just have a sales training center.
Okay? We can talk a lot about stuff. We can talk a lot about stuff, man.
Yeah.
So I've read a few books on the Mormon religion.
Yeah.
I have a favorite author called John Krakauer,
Yes.
who wrote the book about the Mormon
Under
religion.
the Banner of Heaven.
Under the Banner of Heaven, which told
Obviously, it doesn't put them in the best light.
No, he does not. But it taught me a lot about the fact that this is a very new religion, one of the newest religions, Joseph Smith, on earth. So it's as compared to an older religion where a lot of the stories are gone. This is at a state that it's, I think, if I remember correctly, one of the fastest growing religions there is.
And it's because they use missionaries, right? I mean, 80,000 people around the world, like going around and proselytizing, also means that
80,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think men do it. It's a commandment for men to do it. Women are allowed to do it too if they'd like. So obviously you still have a number of women doing it.
And it's so interesting to hear that you go into this sales training, because I'd also watched some documentaries before, and one of it, I remember that, again, you just reminded me, it was about what is it like to be in this, and some people find it hard, the companionship. But I do remember one person put up their hand in the training class. It's like, what if someone says no when I meet them? Because they'd never been out on the streets before, right?
Yeah.
As you have said, you have been told no.
Yeah.
Maybe
So many
tens of
people
thousands
say
or hundreds, certainly tens of, maybe hundreds
At least
of
thousands of times.
Oh,
but yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But it was now you say it, and the person said to them, this is how we think about it.
Yeah.
This is how we understand it. But it was just sales training.
Yeah.
It was just sales training.
Yeah.
The way to go forward.
Definitely.
Now that I know that the multi-level marketers are in there.
You can look them up. And they do well, right? I mean,
I sold door to door. So I'm 57. I started selling life insurance door to door in London for a company called Allied Dunbar.
Okay. Yeah.
Not a great place. It was known as Allied Crowbar, because we will get your money from you, right?
Yeah.
And we sold life insurance, and the script they gave us was to knock on the door and say, "Hello, I'm Ned, and can I ask you a simple question?
Yeah.
Do you love your family?"
Wow. Okay. Same thing. Same draw.
The draw was, but if you loved your family,
You'd buy life
God
insurance to
forbid
protect
something
your family.
happened to you.
You would buy. That's a good question.
It's a great question, right? Because what are they going to say? No? Okay, you're a psycho. I'm out of here. Yes, you have life insurance. That's great. I'm really happy. And if you're happy with it, I'm out of here.
So actually that question is utilized by the church too.
Wow.
But basically the church, again, teaches that families can be together forever. That sometimes backfires. And I don't know if it backfired for you actually, because you say, do you love your family? And some people say, no, I really don't want to be with my family forever. They'd be like, that's the last thing I want. Then you're like, oh shit, I got to change my question now.
The reality is in those, this is the other thing I've learned about sales. You've got to get away from the no's really quickly and not let it sit in your soul.
Yeah.
If every no that you get sits in your soul, it's too hard. Somebody gave me some really good advice one time is, Chien, if somebody said to you no, they're not saying, no, I don't like you do. They're just saying, hey, you're the wrong person at the wrong time. Yeah. It's almost never.
If you know that, then you're okay in sales, right? Because I think a lot of people take it as personal rejection. It's not. They're rejecting the religion. Okay, maybe in dating, that's the only time where I guess you're just like, okay,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sorry, too bad for that one. That sucks to be you, but
but it's right. I think it's. I always get asked, how do you turn no's to yeses? I like this phrase. We want yeses and nos. We don't want maybes. Nos are totally fine.
Yeah.
And if somebody isn't the right person at the right time, you smile, because that negative energy that sits inside you, and I didn't do as much as you, but I spent about a year and a half knocking doors in London.
Yeah.
Knock, knock, click, 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 click. And after a while, it feels like I don't care how many times you punch me in the face.
Yeah.
This is totally fine.
But I think a no's not a no also in the sense that, so like my last role, I think people would say sometimes, oh, we don't need this technology at the moment, right? I mean, you say, okay, and you leave it open, as you said, it's positive, right? You say, thanks so much anyways, contact me anytime. And the funny thing is, I think in 2 or 3 instances, 2 or 3 weeks later, not 2 or 3 years later, they actually say like, actually, I need to look at your solution again, right? And so if you leave a negative impression or energy, they're not going to contact you again.
100. And it's so clear that, the smile and dial.
Yeah.
It isn't just smile when you dial.
Yeah.
No, totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm just over here.
Yeah.
If you ever need me, I'm over here.
Yeah.
Doing my thing.
And it's a genuine smile.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. That. So you've been through corporate life. How old are you now? 30?
Yeah. 37.
37.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. 37 this year. 36 going on 37.
Okay. And you've had a good run.
Yeah.
Bloomberg, Goldman's, Uber, Grab. How would you summarize that? I mean, and now at Token 249, GTM?
Yeah, I mean, career trajectory wise, I mean, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I guess as with a lot of people, I think when I was going through school and all that, grades were okay, but not amazing also. So I think even in university, I think my first major was actually psychology, because I had watched some shows, read some books, took a psych class in high school, and it's like, oh, I wouldn't mind being a forensic psychologist, like interviewing criminals and all that, and trying to figure out their psyche. Then when I went to school, I was like, man, I really don't want to do a master's after this or a doctorate. So I was like, let me switch to something else. So I switched to finance, did a few of the classes, was doing okay-ish, but then my mom was like, hey, you're pretty okay with people. Why don't you do public relations? So I signed up, got into the program, and started doing that.
Yep.
It was a good thing, which I realized that you probably don't need to get a degree in public relations. Not to say it didn't help, but I've always said that I would have rather done a degree where it's a hard skill, even if it's accounting, even if it's boring. I just think it's always good to have a hard skill, right, or something that you can always fall back on. But I think halfway through, I realized, man, I really don't want to do public relations. By that time, I switched majors 3 times, and the university was like, "You've done enough credits. Like, finish and get out." Right? Other people need to come into school, right? Like, other people want to come to university.
I know the American system is.
Yeah,
we gave you your chances, man.
And by the way, they're subsidizing it, right? So they're like, "Hey, like, we want you to get out. We need to push more people through." I was trying to figure out what to do, and I actually had a professor. He said, "Hey, do you want to intern at Bloomberg News one day?" My news professor.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, I mean, sure, why not?
Oh, man, let's do it.
And so I interviewed, and then I got the internship, and it was great. I really got to learn how to write. The internship's great. I wrote like about 80 articles, and this is an intern. They give you obviously simpler things to write and all that. Some of them are daily reports and all that, but it was cool because it's hands-on, right? Skills. And then that's like, oh man, I kind of want to do something finance related. So again, still no idea what I wanted to do. Next summer or close to next summer, a friend messages me one day and says, hey, you should apply for an internship at Goldman Sachs. And said, dude, they would never take me. I have no relevant experience. And he said, I'm an Arabic major. I just finished my internship with them. And what I realized is that Goldman and a lot of these companies actually want people of different backgrounds. They don't want everyone in finance, everyone who's just doing accounting, whatever, because then you don't get a variety of thought, right?
Yep.
So I went there, did an internship, and they call the internship your 10-week interview, right? They get about 80% of their analyst class each year from the internship.
Yep.
And so I did that, and then, got the job offer, right? And so obviously my parents were like, hello, you probably should take this job. And so I think my last year in school, I took classes on Tuesday and Thursday, and then took 5 days off.
Wow.
Which was a rude shock when I started work.
Because Goldman Sachs is not 2 days a week.
Plus my hours went the other way, right? And I was just like, what is going on? But it was a great experience. I mean, I think in terms of learning, I was doing a trading middle office, was trading swaps and CFDs, didn't know anything about them, learned. I think what I've enjoyed about my career, which I'll talk a bit more about, is that I've always been able to learn things from it, right? And I've always enjoyed the education on the job. So,
sorry, I was going to say, it makes sense now more. 2 years, okay, your American education, which gives you this. And again, I love Singapore, but you are not a typical Singaporean anymore. I think you know that. I say that with all respect to Singaporeans and yourself. The trajectory. And then you do 2 years of basically the best sales training in the world. You then go to Goldman Sachs. And you become a bit of a killer. You become pretty robust, I think, because Goldman Sachs is not
it teaches you structure.
Yes, right? But Goldman Sachs, I know people who've worked there. And I always felt when I go in the office, I'm like, it's just full of really good people. This place just knows how to do it. And listening to what you did from the religious point of view, you're walking around with might not be hard skills like accounting skills, but you have these skills inside you. You've sold on the streets for 2 years. You then worked at one of the best firms with some of the best people in the world without knowing what's inside you now. It's a pretty impressive being.
But again, you don't know anything of it, right? When you're doing it, right? You're just there in the moment. I did Goldman for 2 years and was like, I don't really want to do this the rest of my life. It was really interesting because I remember my boss telling me one day she went for some career thing with a bunch of students, and they said, like, are you doing anything to improve the world? And she was like,
she asked you?
No, the students asked her that. Oh, and she was like, what a rude question in mind. But it was a valid question. She said, thankfully she had a good answer because some of our customers are pension plans, and she said we're helping these pension plans make money and let people retire, later on. And for once, they made good money, right? So, I mean, it was a huge pension plan out of Canada. So after that, was looking for roles in the US, wanted to move over to tech. It was really hard to do the whole visa thing.
I know the visa thing.
Yeah. Okay, 100%.
My kid's going through it as well.
And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, what can I do? And I said, you know what? I can probably work at the same tech companies, in Singapore too. So one of the guys I interned with at Bloomberg, again, relationships matter.
Of course.
Was like, hey, yeah, we have roles available at Uber. He was there. And so I applied, got the job offer. And that was where I took a 40% pay cut, but had the best 2-ish years before we got sold off. Because I always say that I learned more at Uber in 3 months than I learned at Goldman in 2 years.
Why?
Because it was the Wild West. You just learned and did everything, right? So at that point, we were at war of grab, right? Do everything at all costs to win. And so it was experimenting. It was running A/B tests. It was trying to figure out different messaging. I remember one time, and I think I've written about this before, but one time China had just been sold off, as in we had merged with Didi Kuaidi over there. And so the amount of money they had been losing, which is $2 billion a year, was now up for grabs, right? As in they weren't burning it. So mentally you're like, well, I can now utilize this money.
There's that cash.
So they implemented this project globally called Project Black Gold, which was basically, let's redeploy this cash. So in my own little town, in my own little city, in my own little team, my bosses pulled me aside and said, here's $5 million, spend it in 1 month or we'll take it back. My job back then was to acquire drivers. So I ran the sales team where we were doing analytics, marketing, operations, everything. And so I had a co-lead and we both turned to each other and we said, how do we spend $5 million in a month?
Again, this is not easy.
And we're in our 20s. We're in our mid-20s, right? And so you're just like, how do you spend like five mil?
Go.
And so we structured it. I mean, again, this is sales, but we did inefficient sales. So back then, when you drove with Uber, when you drove your first trip, if you rented your car from us, you would get $500 as a bonus.
Incentives, yep.
But because we needed to spend the money, it went up to $2,000. So drive your first trip, get a $2,000 first trip bonus. Not bad, right?
Well, not bad at all.
Yeah.
But in essence, it's crazy because you're still in sales. You're giving away $5 million, but it can't just, hey, give it to one dude.
Yeah.
And you have to sell them in the right
Yeah.
way. And look, with all respect, you're 20-something. You don't really know. You're like,
Yeah.
you're just firing
Which
off
is why
cash.
it was fun because you learn, you're experimenting with someone else's money, right? And then we did different projects, etc., and all around that. So that's why I said I learned so much because you could learn anything you wanted because it was all about testing, right? And it really helped me to understand pivoting, growth, etc., and all that. So when I moved over to Grab, which I thought I would only stay with for a year, I ended up staying there for almost 2 years. Yeah. But it was great. When I moved over, I said, hey, I don't want to do ride hailing anymore. There's only so much you can share. You can share a bus, a toilet seat. I don't know what you want to share, but
the limited amount of things.
And I moved over to the financial group. So I spent about 3 years launching different financial products for them. I launched cards for them for about 1.5 years, which again, learning. Didn't know anything about credit cards. Didn't know anything about debit cards.
But you still got to sell credit cards and debit cards because there's competition everywhere.
Exactly. And built the entire structure for that. So really got to learn and then spent another year or so building out an investment product that we had back then and then insurance. And I got to learn about insurance and sell insurance and how do you build that into the app while it's embedded without, breaking the law also, I guess. So
it's so cool, man. Like it's so cool that you get to experience these.
Yeah.
So then I'm going to ask you the tough question.
Yeah.
What made you decide to open a bar after all of this? Because you've written openly about it, and we're both startup dudes who have had ideas and not worked out. And I think as salespeople, we have this belief. You have to have belief.
Yeah.
When you're selling, whether it's religion, you've got to have belief. And I think it's sometimes I'm a bit delusional. I'm like, I can sell anything. Well, I can't. Or I can do anything. I can't. You need some of that. But what struck in your head? You open a bar called Jekyll and Hyde?
Yeah. So actually, my then business partner and I bought over the bar. So the bar had been around for 4 years. I saw on a website for sale. It's an established cocktail bar in Tanjong Pagar for sale. And I thought, oh, looks interesting. Clicked on it, looked at it, and I was like, oh, I've been here before. It's an enjoyable place. Let me go and check it out. So to caveat, I always had the bar on the side, as in I was working full time and also running the bar, which was a bit wild,
extra crazy
in retrospect. But I think I looked at it from the perspective of if I could work my Goldman and Uber hours, I could probably do this pretty easily too.
But there's there's a little bit of the sales.
And that's the code switching too, which you don't realize. At work, at least you're doing one thing, right? Or even if you're doing multiple things within work, it's within certain context. Then there's something that's wholly irrelevant where you have to move your mind over to. But no, why I did it? I just sold my place in the US, had a bit of cash. And it was a combination of 1, stupidity, 2, nativity, and 3, idiocy, I would say.
But I would, and again, I wasn't there. I don't know. You'll be yes, all of those. Plus this kind of confidence that, you've sold religion, you've been a Goldman, not in an arrogant way. I don't mean it in a, oh, look at me.
I would say it's optimism, actually.
Yes, but because you've done hard things. Yeah. We both talk about this.
I can do hard things.
You can do hard things.
Well, okay, I still cannot run 60 km and I will physically collapse. I think I ran 10 km yesterday and my hammies are still very tight. So there are some things that you can,
There's some things you'll get, you're building up there. But what the short history of that, because in essence you're now selling alcohol, or are you selling experience in a bar? What are you selling?
Both. You're right though. You're selling alcohol and you're selling experience. You're selling different things to different people. Yeah. If Ned has had a hard day, I'm selling you alcohol because you just need it. Like, why don't you have one more shot? Because you've had a hard day, and I think that tequila shot is going to reduce the edge.
Yep.
But if you're there on a date, then obviously it's experience.
Correct.
It's a good service. The drinks are explained to you. We leave you in your corner to enjoy your time. So it's both. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you really are selling experience, but you're selling a curated experience based on the needs of the person or the people that are there.
What did you learn from the bar?
A lot of things. Well, I mean, practically speaking, I learned how to run a business, right? Like when you work for a company, it's not your money, so it's someone else's money.
You get paid at the end of the week, and you're like, wow, this is awesome.
I mean, obviously, you still want to be responsible, and you still want to own it and all that, but you're an employee. But when you run your own business, whether it's software or whether it's a bar, every month you're like, do I have enough money to pay the bills? That is the single question that you ask yourself every month, right? And I think that is the toughest thing. Second thing that I learned is obviously I think people management. Obviously I manage people on the professional side. I think in the F&B side or in the retail side, it's a different demographic also. And so you're also learning how to manage a different group of people, right? In terms of like mindset, mentality and all that. So it's just different, right? You're just learning how that works essentially from that perspective. And I think thirdly, at the end of the day, you're learning customer service from a different perspective, right? Like sales, when it comes to work, it's still fairly professional. It is relationship driven and all that. But when you're at a bar, again, because it's experience driven, it really is more personal, I guess.
It's I've worked in bars and I've always enjoyed it because there's this very unique little moment in that you are selling from behind the bar, but they want to be there. And you can create, hey, if somebody wants a shot or a beer, here's a beer. Or how's your day, man? How's it going? Like you can walk into that little sales experience right there and make it good, bad, indifferent, and you can do it every minute. Hey, great, little sales experience. Next customer.
Well, and you're always trying to upsell too, because when you finish a drink, I want you to have the second drink. I don't want you to walk out. I want you to have the incremental drink, because every incremental drink you have also probably means that you probably will have another drink after that.
And also probably means that if you're enjoying it, you'll come back again.
Exactly.
You'll tell other people.
Word of mouth, for sure.
So I asked you a hard question, why did you do it? I'll ask you a harder question. We've both had businesses that haven't worked out. And, it's both brutal. I mean,
yours is on a much larger scale, by the way.
Thank you. My failure's on a larger scale than yours.
Okay, good point. Okay, didn't think about that too.
But it is correct. No, but seriously, in a way, I think I'm learning that, suffering is good. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We're all first world problems, right? We're not suffering, getting blown up and different things in the world. But the first world that we find ourselves in, this, first world problem idea, comfort's overrated. And you did not want the bar to close. I did not want Bamboo to close. And I think now for me, we're about at the same time. It's about a year and a bit removed now. Apart from
I think we were about the same time-ish, right? So I think that's why I think it was very relevant for both of us. We were both like, semi-bitching, and we're like, oh my God, like this sucks. Like,
And there's the bit that I had to liquidate. So I'm going through liquidation and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. But you've got to do it. You've got to do it the right way. I think today, I don't often say it, but I think this is going to be good for me. I think this is not from a financial point of view, not from 100%. Many other points of view. And I think there is some, I hate to say you, not you,
Yeah.
You
in
can't hurt me
general.
now. Like I feel stronger. Sure, stuff will still hurt me.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good. Do you feel the same? Do you feel different? How do you feel?
I mean, I feel relief. No, because I mean, the stress is immense. People don't unless you have been in the same situation, even if you're a business owner, unless you have been in the same situation, which I guess most business owners have at some point in another, you don't understand. You cannot comprehend. Right? I mean, you can sympathize, you cannot empathize. Right? Because it's a whole different level of understanding that you get from that. No, I mean, like, a lot of people ask, like, would you have done it if you knew everything? And to be completely upfront, to a certain extent, my answer is no. I'd rather have figured out different ways to learn things, right? But I cannot change the past. And so I take what I have learned and apply that in the future. And I apply that in my daily life now, right? In my work, in my personal life. How do I implement certain things that I've learned and be better for whatever I want to do in the future? I mean, I think at some point in the future, I'll do my own company again. What it is, I don't know, but these things have taught me certain basic things, like things that I have to structure and implement from the beginning. Not to say that the company won't fail, but to give it a much lower chance of failing, right? Or being at least moderately successful.
I wouldn't do it again either. I had the highs of highs. You know, Bamboo for a while was a rock star, right? You know, we were cool you were in Dallas, which is kind of rock star, but you know, we were cool. And I think you get blinded, you know, for a while. Oh, we're raising money. We must be geniuses, right? Yep. And I'm sure at Jekyll and Hyde, you had times when it was rocking.
I was doing well, business was good. We raised money too and all that. Same thing, investors and all that. And you want to keep them happy too, right? I mean, some of them are professional, but some of them are friends. Some of them, and so it's also, again, relationships at the end of the day. Right?
I think it's, you know, I think it's, I wouldn't do it again. Well, a certain, do I think it would be good? Is it good for me in the long run? Yes. Yeah. You know, I have family and I spent 8 years at a startup pretty much not getting paid and not getting an exit.
And not spending time for your family.
Not spending time. I mean, you know, this is the other reality.
That's actually the bigger
because
thing.
it just stays in your head. Even when you're having dinner with family.
Yeah.
It's ding, 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 just
100%.
running through your head. Yeah. But, you know, you come out the other side and look, if I had to put money, would you do another business again, given your sales skills and your knowledge? You know, I would put money, yes. Yeah. You know, do I think it's, you know, I'm now doing the sales movement, which touch wood seems to be working. Yeah. And you're right. I'm still making mistakes, I'm sure. Yeah. But I'm hopefully not making
the same mistakes.
Mistakes. And the one thing I've really found, it's hard for, I'm going to say people like us. You're a sales guy. It's hard to appreciate how hard sales is for people who don't get it. When I started the sales movement, I'm working with B2B startups. Yep. And so many people. So I've had 30 clients in 12 months now. So I know it works. And the one question is,
you're selling well to them.
Well, if I hadn't sold any, there would be a problem here. There would be like, how many clients have you got? None. Yeah. What should we sell? No. But the question is this: how does it work? And I'm like, well, you start by building a list. Yeah. What's a list? People who are interested. Yeah. Where do you find them? But you understand who's your customer. But who is my customer? And you know this phrase, the curse of knowledge. When you know something really in depth, you know, look, and with all respect, I'm a little older than you. I've been doing it 35 years. You've got a lot of years in those 2 years. You're 15, 17 years in. It's now just in your DNA, and sometimes it's very hard. I meet the startups. I'm like, so you have no salespeople, no pipeline. You don't put out content, and then you wonder why you don't have sales. And I'm almost like, is this like kind of
are we in the same room?
Are we in the same room?
Yeah.
But it's a skill that you don't, you know, it's hard for you to appreciate that you have it so in depth.
Yeah. I think, and that's with any profession, right? I think whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a salesperson, you know it so well, and so you think it's natural. People should be able to do this. But that's why we're good at what we do and why we do what we do, right?
Do you like it?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I derive energy from people, right? From talking to people. Other people don't. Other people get their energy sucked. So, I mean, I think for me, for sales, it's also like, I think some salespeople are like, oh, I love it when I get a deal. I mean, yeah, I enjoy it. But what I enjoy is the process. I enjoy getting to know people. I mean, I was talking to another friend who does sales named Gail. He's very cold calling driven, right? Yep. That's never been fully my modus operandi. Sure. I still do it, obviously, for certain things. I do it today for work, right? But I've always kind of looked at it from the perspective of how do I get a connection through a relationship that I have built over a long time, right? So 100%. Different types of sales that you can do. And mine's always, I guess, been more content, I guess, and relationship.
Well, why don't we
right?
have 5 more minutes, and why don't we ask about that? We both use content in sales.
Yeah.
How did you start? How does it work? I know how it works for you, but what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, for me, I started because I wanted to complain about the bar. Yeah, I mean, like I was half complaining and also like half just like reaching a different demographic and saying like, hey, like do come by and all that. But I think for me, writing has always been cathartic. I enjoy writing. I mean, I background again, news and I'm public relations and all that. So writing has come fairly naturally to me, I suppose. And so it was just an extension of that, actually. I think just writing content that at first was just more for me to put things out there, but then people resonated with it, right? And then you start to think about, I guess people enjoy this. How do I craft my messaging, or how do I craft content that actually, one, is interesting to me for me to write, and then also like beneficial to people.
And it feels super real. Like, quite often people are like, I don't know what to write. I think once you've done it enough, again, both of us have, I just write what I feel.
It's the same thing. Sales, writing, it's a muscle, right? Whatever you do, if you run every day, your body gets used to it. For the person who's running for the first time, they're gonna die because their muscles are not warmed up. They don't know what speed they should go at. They don't know what their threshold is. And so, they don't know how to breathe. It's the same thing with anything that we do.
It is.
Yeah.
It's great to do. I love to see it. I think it's great. We could chat all day about sales.
Yeah.
Man. I think we only booked an hour. We should have done 2.
We can always do another hour another time.
We
But
have to do it.
Yeah.
It's super cool, man. Like I love to see all the content you're doing. Your new role. But I'm gonna finish with 2 questions, if I may.
Yeah.
What would you tell an 18-year-old who wants to be in sales? Maybe not. Well, maybe your 18-year-old self. What would you tell an 18-year-old Chien or an 18-year-old kid today?
Go be a Mormon missionary. It's a great sales. It's the greatest sales lesson, right? But no, but if you want to do it, you have to do it. Sorry, I know that sounds a bit weird, but like you just have to do it, right? In terms of sales. So I mean, it can even be working at McDonald's. It can be working at Haagen-Dazs, because that's all sales. Like, hi, how can I help you? Sales isn't just about selling.
Correct.
It's about how do you interact with people, right? So if you're working at McDonald's, it's genuinely saying, hi, how can I help you today? Or like, what would you like? Not like, what do you want to order, right? That's one aspect of sales. But then if you go and, at the MRT, go and, sell, not insurance, what do you say? The charity stuff. Which I wholly don't think is a great thing. But it's also a different skill that you learn, right? You learn again, this is a rejection again, over and over 100%. Again, right? And I think as an 18-year-old, doing something where you learn that you can do hard things. So actually going to run a marathon.
I love that.
Maybe that's something that you learn. I can run a marathon. The reason why I know I can do so many things is because as a missionary, I was doing this for 2 years and I had to do it, rain or shine. Didn't have anything to stop me from doing it. And so it taught me I can do hard things. When I was working at Goldman, I was working crazy hours. I can do hard things. When I was at Uber, when push came to shove, we were working till like midnight or 1 or 2. I can do hard things.
I love it.
And as a salesperson, you need to be able to do hard things, because you are going to be faced with rejection time and time again. And if you build that thick skin in the right way, that is where you have a healthy relationship with sales and you have a healthy relationship with your work.
Dude, that was beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I often write, I think sales is one of the greatest skills.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but on LinkedIn, I write salesman.
Yeah.
And I used to have salesman on my card. People are like, why would you write that?
Yeah.
People don't like salesmen. I'm like, hello, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I like being a salesman.
Yeah.
And I know there's the wrong and the right way to do it. I actually, in the sales movement, I write selling without selling. I'm not here to pitch you. I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
I'm here to listen to make it work. But it's not obvious until it's obvious.
Well, and in any profession, you are doing sales, right? So if you're a senior consultant at BCG, you are selling. If you're 100%. A partner at a law firm, you're doing BD. If you're a doctor and you move out into private practice, what are you doing? You're selling your cardiology practice. You're always selling.
That is the way forward. All right, one last question, because we are on time. It's a completely random question. I used to have on my other shows.
Yeah.
If you could live forever, would you?
If it's healthy and had money, sure. I mean, it's contextual, right? If I had enough money to live and I had food and you can develop more and more relationships. I don't know. Again, we're more extroverted. I think I'll be able to find friends. Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
The reason I ask it, I've asked it on all of my bamboo shows. So I've done it 150 times.
Okay, and what's the percentage of yes and no?
Almost all women say no.
Interesting.
Almost all men initially say yes.
Interesting.
And the other things, I used to go, yes.
Yeah.
Because me and you, we have so many things to do.
Yeah,
we have
and accomplish.
We have to, and then somebody said to me, but what's your purpose then? So to your religious question at the beginning, do you want to know why I'm here? Why you're here? I do.
Yeah.
If you're going to live forever, well, what's the point? Anyway, I know it's just it's a fictitious question.
For me, the reason why I would want to live forever or for a long time anyways is because I think it'd be really cool to see how the world develops. I want to see how technology develops. I mean, I'm a tech-forward person, right? So I would love to see flying cars in 10 years or 20 years or 100 years. I would love to see...
You're still going to live 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay.
You know what I mean? I would love to see like us going to Mars. I would love to go and travel and see what's going on. I would love to go to... Okay, Pluto seems a bit wild, but maybe Mars or to a different planet. Like, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean...
I know.
Again, because I enjoy learning.
Of course.
I don't think I'll ever get bored. Because can you imagine how many encyclopedias you have to read before you could exhaust the knowledge that you have in the world? Like history or like reading books. I like to read.
Yeah.
I read more books. If I could live forever, I watch more TV shows. If I could live forever, I'd try more food. If I could live forever, I would spend more time with different friends and make new friends.
It makes total sense.
I get where you're coming from, but I also think there's enough to do for quite a while. I don't know, maybe in 1,000 years, I'd be like, man, this sucks.
Yeah, I'm done now.
But I think I've got at least a couple 100 years where there'd be things to do.
I think that's fair. Chien, that was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll speak again.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.